Why do good people who live selflessly and carry the world's weight often find themselves consumed by unhappiness? Could it be that their goodness conceals a fatal mistake? A mistake so profound that it doesn't just steal their joy but shapes their suffering. Fyodor Dostoevsky, one of history's most significant novelists and philosophers of the soul, believed this to be true. He saw an inner conflict in good people, a heavy moral burden that turned their light into darkness. But what is this mistake? Why do good people stumble into despair in their pursuit of virtue? We must journey through the depths of his philosophy, characters, and life to uncover Dostoevsky's answer. Good people often see the world's pain as their responsibility. They live with a heightened sensitivity to injustice, cruelty, and suffering. They strive to heal what is broken, to love where there is hate, and to offer peace in a world of conflict. Yet this noble pursuit often leaves them broken themselves. But let's pause. Why is this the case? Is it because the world is cruel and indifferent to goodness? Or could the answer lie more profoundly in how good people perceive their role in the world? This is where Dostoevsky's insight cuts through. His work forces us to ask, do good people confuse their love for the world with the need to save it? Dostoevsky saw a pattern among the virtuous. They carry burdens not meant for them. They assume the weight of a world they cannot change, and in doing so they lose themselves. This isn't just a philosophical abstraction. Dostoevsky lived it. After being sentenced to death and pardoned at the last moment, Dostoevsky was exiled to Siberia. In those years of hardship, he observed that the most compassionate prisoners often suffered the most. Why? Because they tried to absorb the suffering around them, believing it was their duty. Yet, this only deepened their despair. Dostoevsky's lesson is clear. Good people's unhappiness doesn't come from their goodness, but from their misunderstanding. Raskolnikov's journey exemplifies this in Crime and Punishment. He believes that by committing a terrible act for the greater good, he can justify his guilt and alleviate the world's suffering. Instead, his actions destroy him. Dostoevsky shows us that good people become isolated in despair when they try to play savior. The fatal mistake is clear. Good people confuse their role as witnesses to suffering with the responsibility to solve it entirely. They take on burdens beyond their capacity, believing that to be good means to suffer for the world. Dostoevsky's characters repeatedly grappled with this error. In the Brothers Karamazov, Father Zosima warns, each is responsible for all. But Dostoevsky's point isn't to carry all burdens, it's to acknowledge our shared humanity without losing ourselves. This theme resonates deeply in Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground. The narrator, embittered and isolated, reflects on his inability to reconcile his desire for moral greatness with his failure to meaningfully impact the world. His self-imposed sense of inadequacy becomes a prison, illustrating how misplaced responsibility can corrode the soul. This confusion has a cost. Good people's relentless pursuit of fixing the world often leads to burnout and resentment. They feel isolated and burdened by an unspoken expectation that their sacrifices will bring about change. Dostoevsky's brilliance lies in showing us this is a trap. In The Idiot, Prince Myshkin, a Christ-like figure, tries to embody pure goodness, yet his kindness is misunderstood, exploited, and ultimately rejected. His downfall isn't his goodness, but his inability to balance it with self-preservation. Dostoevsky's wisdom is this: goodness without boundaries turns into martyrdom. And martyrdom without purpose leads to despair. The tragedy of Prince Myshkin is a warning for good people everywhere. Without boundaries, their light will be extinguished by the very darkness they hope to dispel. Here is Dostoevsky's brilliant insight. Suffering is inevitable, but not all suffering belongs to us. Good people must learn to distinguish between the pain they can address and the pain they must let go of. Dostoevsky's characters teach us that genuine goodness isn't about erasing suffering, but about solidarity with it. In the Brothers Karamazov, Father Zosima's teachings emphasize shared suffering. He says, "What is hell? I maintain that it is the suffering of being unable to love." For Dostoevsky, Love isn't about solving every problem. It's about being present, about bearing witness to pain without being consumed. One of Dostoevsky's most striking contributions is his belief in love as the ultimate resistance against despair. For Dostoevsky, love is not passive, it is an active, courageous choice to connect with others despite the pain it may bring. In the Brothers Karamazov, Alyosha's love for his family, flawed as they are, becomes his strength. He does not attempt to erase their faults but stands beside them, embodying the idea that shared suffering is a form of redemption. Love in action is a harsh and dreadful thing compared to love in dreams, writes Dostoevsky. This harsh love requires courage, humility, and the wisdom to know one's limits. Dostoevsky understood that goodness can become a source of pride when left unchecked. Good people may unconsciously view their sacrifices as proof of their moral superiority, creating a cycle of hidden resentment when their efforts go unnoticed. This shadow side of goodness is explored in Notes from Underground, where the narrator's bitterness stems from his unmet expectations of recognition. Dostoevsky reminds us that genuine goodness is not about being exalted by others, but the quiet, often unseen acts of love that sustain the human spirit. Good people must confront their need for validation and replace it with a more profound, more authentic sense of purpose. Dostoevsky's life was a crucible of suffering. He endured imprisonment, the death of loved ones, and his battles with illness and poverty. Yet he emerged from these trials not with bitterness, but with a profound understanding of human resilience. His faith and his art became his way of transforming suffering into meaning. He wrote, "To live without hope is to cease to live." For Dostoevsky, hope wasn't found in fixing the world, but in embracing the beauty of connection, faith, and shared humanity. Good people's happiness lies in this realization. They are not saviors but can be companions on the journey. The one fatal mistake ruining good people's happiness is their attempt to carry the world's suffering alone. Dostoevsky's wisdom teaches us that happiness doesn't come from fixing everything but from loving deeply, embracing shared suffering, and finding humility in life's mysteries. Dostoevsky understood that to reclaim happiness, good people must accept their limits. It begins with acknowledging that suffering cannot be eradicated, only faced. It requires stepping back from the illusion of control and embracing the humility to let go of what is not theirs to carry. In doing so, they discover a more profound strength, the strength to connect with others, to endure together, and to find purpose in love rather than solution. The darker the night, the brighter the stars, the deeper the grief, the closer is God. Good people must learn that their role isn't to save the world, but to love it as it is flawed, beautiful, and worth enduring. Are you carrying burdens that aren't yours to bear? Will you let go of the weight breaking you, or will you continue to carry it alone? The answer could change everything.